I got asked about a year ago about a senior member of the State Department. He said, Rob, I've got a question. Do you think the ANC are malevolent or incompetent? And I said, wow, that's quite a question. Why are you asking? He said, because AGOA, the fisheries agreement, doesn't seem like they know how to fill out the paperwork and send it back to us. It's just nothing's happening. And I said, well, let me think about it. I said, I would probably say it's 80% incompetence and 20% malevolence. And I think that there are these madalas in the cabinet at the second and tertiary level. The cadre or cadre deployments has taken place. You've got thousands of people who've been put in positions of power and influence and control of budget, getting things done that have absolutely no idea what they're doing. I mean, I won't call them stupid, but they'll just say not trained and, incompetent. And that level of people needs to go away. I think in the ANC, there are good people. Look at finance, treasury, Ramagopa, and other people that have been appointed to the head of Eskom. Eskom team are doing very well. They're there. They just haven't graduated the madalas out of the way. So the ideology is malevolent, but I think it lacks leadership.
We actually got fat and happy in South Africa with AGOA. AGOA was a hell of a sweetheart deal for South Africa. Essentially, South Africa is about the biggest country in Africa that took advantage of AGOA. These are landing exports from car manufacturing to the citrus farmers, other kinds of fruits, etc., manufacturing garments, duty-free at zero. I mean, literally landing at zero tariff. So we've had a sweetheart deal. There is a new world reality. But if we could just get those 30% tariffs into the 10-15% range, it will still unlock a lot more exports. I mean, Dawie's an expert on this. We still need to boost exports. You can't really ignore the US. I know it's not necessarily massive for daily GDP, but I'm told up to 100 to 200,000 jobs are on the line, Dawie, if this AGOA and the trade deal essentially don't come through at some point.
Here's the thing, Anthony. So we're bashing government here and we're bashing the administration and calling them incompetent. And I agree with all those sort of things. But, looking at the motor industry specifically in South Africa, the motor industry in South Africa is hugely subsidized. There's a very complicated whole mechanism behind it, but it basically comes down to the South African motor car consumer that subsidizes those exports. That's our motor industry. Now, the motor industry, just by the way, they won't be able to compete with the American, or rather the Chinese. The new Chinese guys are going to kill them anyway. But despite this massive subsidy, they simply couldn't still not yet establish an industry that can compete internationally. So why is that? And I'm trying to figure that out. So the private sector received this huge subsidy for many years now, and still they cannot live without the subsidy. So why is that? I think the only answer I can think of is that motor car industry is not for us. That's not what we're good at. The Chinese are good at it. We are good at something else. We are good at growing oranges, and we are good at tourism, and we're good at all sort of other things, but we're not good at motor cars.
Look at the steel industry. It's been relying on subsidies.
And I think what we should perhaps be looking at in South Africa, and that's what the Indians are doing, is maybe sort of guide South Africa more into more in the service industry kind of development. Because we're not good at the heavy industry. We have been deindustrializing primarily because of the wrong macroeconomic policies by government, yes. But we have been deindustrializing because South Africa is far away from the big markets. We cannot compete that easily. We don't have the technology. We have to import the technology. We don't have the people. We don't have the local markets. The Chinese have that. The Americans have that. The Europeans have that. It's difficult for South Africa. And if we want to really be part of the modern economy, we have to look at this differently. And I think what the Indians are doing is perhaps the kind of model that we should be looking at as well.
The mining charter and Gwede
mining is
correct.
In exception.
We should be heavily investing in mining because $20 billion and more has gone to other countries because of BEE, mining charter, overregulation, trade unions. If we reignited our mining industry and opened up oil and gas, I believe in fracking, but all the NIMBYs in the Karoo hate me even talking about it. But, the oil and gas, Mozambique, Namibia, we've got gas, massive gas resources off the coast.
And don't underestimate agriculture. Agriculture there's so much potential in agriculture, not only in South Africa, but in the sub-region as well. But you're absolutely right. Minerals, that's a place to invest in.
Well, Rob, given your heritage, man, you know the history. When you look at Anglo-War and Anglo-American, there was a ton of money. JP Morgan actually lent money to the Oppenheimers a century ago. That's why it's called Anglo-American at the end of the day. I know it's a shell of what it was, but you can't ignore Western capital, man. If you had attractive FDI, foreign direct investment incentives to come into South Africa, I mean, the Indians and other countries have got tremendous incentives to attract people who want to build factories or actually bring capital in. They're not going to tax you on day one. They'll let you have accelerated depreciation. There are certain tax incentives that actually have worked around the world. Even the Chinese, with their special economic zones, believe it or not, they often called export processing zones or EPZs. I got involved years ago in Walvis Bay, helping them with Namibia having certain tax reductions. I think you've got something in Kuga in the Eastern Cape that's tried, but it didn't provide all the incentives that typically are provided. There are these zones you could provide as a way to unleash investment and perhaps be less restrictive, exclude the BEE issues, exclude the EWC expropriation. You could actually do this is what Deng Xiaoping did in China. He created these zones to mirror Singapore, to mirror other successful places. So you could actually create opportunity zones to attract more foreign direct investment. I don't think SA is seen as a particularly attractive place for foreigners in terms of the incentives to actually set up businesses. The Chinese come and will flood the market with Shein or Temu and these cheap dresses and fabrics, and even the cars that they have excess capacity in Chinese factories. So that's an issue that they just flood the market with with goods. It's a different kettle of fish with the Americans. They actually are buying, heavily produced goods from South Africa that create jobs. I think the trade between the US and South Africa is much more favorable towards SA jobs than the Chinese trade. So just trying to move across to the east, it's a hell of a different kettle of fish, I would say.
If it was me, and this will upset Dawie, I'd make the Western Cape the special economic zone. And I'd move the American embassy from Pretoria to Cape Town. And I'd put the Nimitz outside Simonstown. Then we'd be in good shape.
I don't like special incentives. I don't like special deals and things like that. Make the whole place a special economic zone. So because the moment you start giving specific industries, governments, politicians are not good at picking champions.
Right.
So don't do that. Just remove the obstacles. That's the answer.